Hello, 8th grade, and welcome to Remote Learning Studio 37 Week 3. I hope the past 2 weeks have been engaging. I hope you have had fun figuring out how to express emotions only using lines, shapes, and colors. I hope you created your own piece of visual jazz that you can be very proud of. This week we're going to delve into some compositional rules and some vocabulary, and I'm also going to lay out my expectations that will be due at the conclusion of this week. This will be your last week in art for the 9 weeks, so please make sure you get your drawing that you listen while you listen to your favorite song, as well as your happy, angry, and sad pictures turned in as soon as possible. Without further ado, I'm going to send it over to my computer to talk about balance and composition. As you set about creating your non-objective compositions, there are some things I want you to think about and some vocabulary I want to go over today. One thing I want you to realize is there are three types of balance when you think about two-dimensional art. There's symmetrical balance, where both sides are the same. There's asymmetrical balance, where the visual elements are spread out throughout the piece. And there's radial balance, which is all elements radiate from a center point. And another way to think about radial balance is it's symmetrical no matter how you fold it in half. Both sides are going to match up. I have some examples to help illustrate these points. This is a symmetrical photograph. Both sides are identical. This is an asymmetrical photograph, but it's nice and evenly balanced because Hokusai used the shape of the wave, again, in the negative space to make a yin-yang. So this is a pretty interesting piece when you think about asymmetrical balance, and it's also a very dynamic piece, which is another word we'll be talking about shortly. And this is an example of radial balance. So no matter how you divide this image, both sides are going to be the same. So there's a work by Alex Gray. It's very symmetrical. Here's one by Jean-Michel Basquiat we talked about last year, asymmetrical. And here is a very nice example of radial balance. Now I'm going to show you a couple more and see if you can identify whether they are symmetrical, asymmetrical, or radial without my help. If your answers were asymmetrical for the crucifixion of St. Peter, symmetrical for the black and white photography, and radial for the Chicago Dome, you are absolutely correct. Moving on to some more things I want to discuss. Static. Static is a picture that has a lot of horizontal and vertical lines in it. So it's very predictable, very stable. The opposite of static would be dynamic. Dynamic is a picture that implies motion, excitement, energy. So if you look at this painting by Peter Paul Rubens, you see this to be very dynamic. And how you make a picture dynamic is you include lots of diagonals in your composition. Lots of diagonals in this composition. Lots of diagonals in this composition. So that is how you create a work that is dynamic. What do you think? Is School of Athens by Raphael static or dynamic? It is rather static. Again, see all the horizontal and vertical reinforcement. Not a lot of diagonals at all. There is a little bit here in his leg, in his leg, and in his legs. These people have been overlooking at something. Still not enough for me to consider it a very dynamic piece. Now, does all art have to be static or dynamic? I mean, some art needs to be static, some art needs to be dynamic. So the next thing I want to talk about is the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds states that if you divide a composition into thirds, both directions, you should try to put your emphasis or your focal point along where those two thirds meet up to create the most engaging compositions and encourage your eye to move around the picture and not off the picture. So if we look at this painting by John Singer Sargent and think about that rule of thirds being applied, Hopefully this will help you understand. So I put that airplane right where those 2/3 meet up. He's got this field kind of falling along the bottom third. He's got one of the workers with the most contrast, so definitely a focal point with the white against the green, right along one of the thirds. So this is a trick to make stronger compositions, and it has been useful for me. So what I want you to do this week is I want you to make a non-objective composition that is dynamic, uses asymmetrical balance, and follows the rule of thirds. You can color your composition with whatever you choose. Welcome back, 8th grade. I hope you enjoyed that film. I hope it gave you a little bit of guidance as you move forward in making your artwork. I wanted to go ahead and share with you, like I promised, I'm going to be working alongside all of my students in my sketchbook this year, and I have started my non-objective composition. So you can see, trying to follow the rule of thirds, trying to use size placement overlap to create depth, even though it is non-objective, and trying to have some dynamic elements to get your eye moving around. I believe I will be using watercolor paint and colored pencils to complete my non-objective composition. And stay tuned to my website or my channel to look for my finished painting. Get to work, have a lot of fun, and have a great week, guys.